Everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today for a MarinHealth webinar on optimizing nutrition and increasing immunity. Everyone is muted, so you will have the opportunity to type. If you have any questions, feel free to enter them into the chat box. If you submitted a question when you registered, then we have those already, and we'll be addressing questions after the presentation. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker, registered dietitian nutritionist, Pamela Riggs. Pamela is committed to improving the lives of others and shares her nutrition expertise with empathy and compassion. She is Outpatient Nutrition Coordinator at MarinHealth's Integrative Wellness Center. She joined our staff in 2013, and she has more than 25 years of professional experience in the field of nutrition, wellness, and health promotion for our community members. Her areas of expertise include weight management, cancer prevention and treatment, and integrative nutrition practices. She's here today to inspire all of us to eat better and fuel a healthy immune system. Thank you, Pamela. Please go ahead and take it away.
Thanks a lot, Monica, and hello, everybody. I'm so grateful that you could join me today for this brief presentation. It's a big topic, and I'm going to try to narrow it down to some important points. I think, during this COVID-19 time that we're all living through, it's a timely topic, and I think besides wearing a mask and social distancing, what can we do to keep ourselves and our family members healthy? So we're going to kind of approach that from a nutrition perspective today. And I like to quote, Hippocrates, kind of the guy who kind of started Western medicine with this phrase, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. I think we know the basics of the importance of good nutrition for essentially, a strong immune system. And I think if you grew up in the generation that I grew up in, when you came down with a cold or signs of the flu, you go to the orange juice, or your mom makes you a nice bowl of chicken noodle soup. And some of us even do things like garlic, which has been kind of found to have some antimicrobial activity. We've come a long way, I think, since Campbell's soup and orange juice. And so today I hope to share a little bit more of our understanding of the role of nutrients in supporting a healthy immune system. So to start with, and I'm going to declare right out here in all in front of you that I am not a nurse, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an immunologist, but I do have a kind of a basic understanding of the complexity of our immune system, and it's truly a complex team that is constantly working to help protect us against infection and injury and diseases, and involves various body tissues, organs, and a variety of different immune cells. The thymus gland and the bone marrow are kind of the primary organs in the body that produce our immune cells. Thymus is kind of known as the master gland. And again, we have so many different types of immune cells, many of them several types of white blood cells that do different actions in the body, engulfing and destroying foreign pathogenic invaders, producing antibodies, releasing histamine as part of kind of an inflammation process. So again, during this time, our team is working really hard to just keep us healthy and safe. And, I get the question, right? Does healthy diet really matter? Can it make a difference? And I just want to say yes, yes, and yes. And the reasons is that every cell, substance, and function of our immune response requires nutrients to respond appropriately. And every component of the immune system then in those immune cells become susceptible to nutrition deficiencies. So it really does make a difference on what you eat and how that impacts your body's ability to mount an effective immune response. So I'm going to dig into that a little bit deeper in three ways kind of that the body does this and how nutrients play a role. The first one is nutrients support immunity by protecting our immune cells from what we call the burst of free radicals that come from the fight against a virus or a bacteria. So what that means, free radicals are unstable molecules that come from metabolic reactions in the body. And those are very unstable, and over time or prolonged exposure to free radicals then can damage healthy cells. So it's a response to the action of our immune cells fighting off a virus or bacteria. And you also produce free radicals just from daily metabolism of everything that goes on in your body, or we have environmental exposure, like sun exposure, cigarette smoke, pollution. Those are all sources of kind of environmental free radicals that we're exposed to. And so there are certain nutrients in our diet that are antioxidant nutrients, which means they help protect our immune cells by keeping that free radical damage in check, and also protect our healthy cells from the free radical damage that can occur just from our body trying to fight off a virus or a bacteria or the normal things that we're exposed to. So nutrients like vitamin C and E, minerals, iron, zinc, copper, and selenium all have antioxidant activity. Vitamin C and E in particular, vitamin C is present inside your cells, and that protects against the free radical damage inside. And vitamin E, it's a fat-soluble nutrient, so it's on kind of the cell membrane, and also protects kind of the cell membrane from being damaged. And then these other minerals play a variety of roles as well in helping your body keep oxidative damage in check, or free radicals in check. The second way our healthy diet helps support immune system is we have to have the building blocks and the cofactors. And cofactors are kind of assistants or helpers in metabolic reactions for our immune system to do what it needs to do, and to be able to sense a foreign invader, to help ramp up the production of cells and chemicals and proteins that carry out its function. So it's just critical to making all these immune cells that we have. Protein's critical. All your immune cells, the basis of them is from amino acids and protein. So we need to get adequate amounts of lean, healthy protein in our diet, as well as vitamins A and D, and a lot of the B vitamins, folate, B12, B6, and again, iron and zinc also provide that role as kind of cofactors or assistants and helpers in the production of making these immune cells provide what we need. What we eat also matters in terms of inflammation. So inflammation is another way our body fights off foreign invaders. Inflammation serves to kind of isolate an injury, an infected area, delivers those immune cells, chemical messengers, antibodies to the site of infection and injury. And I think most of us can kind of relate to inflammation more in an acute inflammatory reaction. So for example, let's say you cut yourself and it gets red and puffy or irritated. That's an acute inflammatory response to isolate the injury and infected area, so that whatever potentially got in that cut's not going to systemically move around, right? So that's how our bodies kind of handle that. And so I think we all can kind of picture inflammation in that way. But a lot of inflammation that's associated with chronic diseases like obesity, diabetes, osteoarthritis, autoimmune disorders, we don't necessarily feel it. I mean, some of us might, aches and pains and things, but it's kind of a underlying systemic inflammation process. So your immune system, inflammation is one way to fight off a foreign invader. The problem is that prolonged inflammation, or the inability of our body to turn it off when we need to, can lead to other tissue damage and chronic disease. And I'll just say, as it relates to COVID-19 infections, inflammation or a serious inflammatory response in lung tissue is one of the things that is happening to people who get really sick with this disease and end up on a ventilator. Again, there's some kind of overreaction of the inflammation inflammatory process. And so the reason, I'm bringing it up is because it's kind of tied into that as well. So what you eat can influence inflammation in the body. One of the primary things is the type of fats that you eat. So omega-3s, which are found in fish and fish oil, also in walnuts and flaxseed. EPA and DHA are particular to fish and fish oil, but they kind of drive the body towards this kind of anti-inflammatory effect. So it helps to, fuel ourselves with healthy fats. There are other anti-inflammatory phytonutrients that are found in like berries and grapes and, the blues and the purples and things that we get in those foods. And again, and then quercetin, which is found in apples and onions, has some anti-inflammatory effect. Certain herbs and spices, turmeric, which is used in curries, is a really potent anti-inflammatory. So again, fueling ourselves with a lot of anti-inflammatory foods can help, just because we need to keep inflammation in check so that it doesn't get so out of control and cause more harm than good. So I'm not going to go into detail about all of the food sources that you can find in these, for these nutrients that we want you to get more, but I thought it would just kind of highlight some things in the next couple of slides. Again, if you're looking for sources of omega-3s from fish and other sources, so again, salmon's really good, sardines, anchovies, herring. Again, you can take a fish oil supplement, and I'm going to address a few supplements at the end of, towards the end of the presentation. But you can also get plant-based omega-3s through flax and chia. Walnuts actually is the only nut that is a good source of what we call alpha-linoleic acid, which is a plant-based omega-3. So again, those are good sources of these omega-3 fats. Vitamin A, we have two forms. We have preformed A, which is found in like eggs, or you can, beta carotene is the other source that gets converted to full vitamin A in the body. So again, sweet potatoes, carrots are all really good sources of vitamin A. Vitamin C, I think, again, we go to oranges, orange juice, but in reality, there are other foods that have a higher vitamin C content. Sweet red peppers, kiwi fruit, strawberries, really good sources. Just for comparison, see the numbers here. I think an orange has about 50 milligrams, versus a kiwi that has 91, or a red pepper that has 152. So again, there's a variety of ways to get vitamin C in. Vitamin D, we'll talk a little bit more when we get to supplementation. But vitamin D, you can get some in pink salmon and sardines. Milk is fortified with a little bit. And, we make vitamin D from sun exposure to our skin. But, for many of us, we're covering up with sunscreen. We're worried about skin cancer. And so we may not get the vitamin D from sun exposure that we could. And in fact, there's been some research to suggest that depending on where you live in the country, if you draw a horizontal line from LA to Atlanta, and here in the Bay Area, we live kind of above that line, that maybe we're not even, getting enough sun exposure to convert, to make enough through our skin. So sometimes supplementation makes sense there, but I'll talk more about vitamin D, because there's kind of a double-edged sword with vitamin D in terms of COVID-19, perhaps. Pink salmon, sardines, sunshine, in 10 to 15 minutes a day, maybe, without sunscreen, might be a good way to kind of boost our vitamin D intakes up. Vitamin E as a fat-soluble nutrient, so we get it in healthy fats, almonds, sunflower oil, avocado. Those are decent sources of vitamin E. Folate and B12 and B6 are all members of the B vitamin family. Folate is found oftentimes in dark leafy greens like spinach. You can also get good sources in beans and lentils. There's a lot of breads and cereals and things that are fortified with folate. And you'll see it listed as folic acid on a label if it's been fortified. B12 is only found in animal products, and so seafood and meat and things are decent sources of B12. If you are a vegan and do not eat any animal products, then a supplement of B12 is probably not a bad idea, just to make sure that you're getting adequate amounts. B6 is, again, found in, salmon, turkey, potatoes, all kinds of foods. It's not too hard to get B6 in your diet. And then we kind of go into the trace minerals, zinc, which is a super important nutrient as it relates to your immune function. Oysters are a really good source. Beef, yogurt, iron, again, is found in, the better iron that's going to be absorbed better is going to be found in beef and meats and things like that. But you can also get it in beans, iron fortified cereals. You can, if you're taking a multivitamin, you're getting a little iron in there. Copper, oysters, cashews, lentils, and selenium, again, is another good antioxidant nutrient. Tuna, pork, whole wheat bread, Brazil nuts. You can get your daily recommended amount of selenium by eating one Brazil nut. So again, more is not better. You don't want to chow down a whole cup of selenium-rich Brazil nuts, but again, if you're looking for ways to get that nutrient in your diet, that's a source. In terms of supplements, so I think when people are sick, I think vitamin C is kind of the to-go for many of us. Pop in a little bit of vitamin C when you're feeling like you're coming down with a cold or a virus of some sort. And, there is a bulk of data there to support that. Studies have found that vitamin C supplementation, when taken at the first signs of a cold or flu or pneumonia, can shorten the frequency or the duration and severity of the common cold. Vitamin C does have potent antioxidant as well as anti-inflammatory effects. So it really makes sense that it's an important nutrient to support a healthy immune system. Where I come from a supplementation point of view would be, always trying to get it food first. As I said, strawberries and kiwis and peppers are such good sources. You can probably easily meet your needs through diet alone, but it's okay to take a vitamin C supplement if you feel like you're coming down with something. It's not going to hurt you to take 400 to 500 milligrams, even 500 milligrams twice a day. I would say do it in divided doses. Your body, it's a water soluble nutrient. You absorb, your tissues get saturated with it, and whatever is not able to get into the tissues at that time is going to be lost in the urine. So it doesn't make sense to, take 2,000 milligrams at a time, but to spread it out. And again, trying to get good sources in your diet and maybe filling in the gap with a little bit of a vitamin C supplement if you feel the need. Vitamin D. So I mentioned that before, and I said I was going to mention it some more here when we talk about supplementation. Vitamin D is important. It's involved in activating our innate immune cells, and those are the ones that are not specific to fighting off specific types of pathogens, but in our digestive system, in our skin, in the macrophages, those kind of engulfing and destroying types of cells that get put out once the body senses a foreign invader. Vitamin D also has been found to increase kind of antiviral properties in respiratory cells, so that's promising. But it's a double-edged sword. So more vitamin D is not necessarily better. And this is true with a lot of nutrients. If you kind of look at research, there's kind of a U-shaped curve. So when you are deficient, you have, health issues and concerns, and that shows up in certain ways in the body. But also when you take too much, you start to see problems as well. So there's kind of a sweet spot, and trying to figure out what that is for you is a little bit, more difficult. So that's typically where recommendations on the amounts of nutrients we should get in our diet every day are kind of based on this U-shaped curve and what is good in the middle for most healthy Americans. In terms of a double-edged sword, so as it relates to inflammation, Vitamin D is important as an anti-inflammatory nutrient, but too much can promote more inflammation in the body. So that's concerning in conditions like COVID-19 illness, where there's this kind of exaggerated inflammatory process. It would probably not be a great idea to be pounding down a lot of vitamin D supplementation if you're sick with this virus. So, but adequate levels, to protect us probably make good sense. And so my recommendations generally with vitamin D these days is, if you can, is to get a blood test and see what your vitamin D status is to start with, because then you'll kind of know whether or not supplementation makes sense. If you have a blood test and you're found to be insufficient or deficient, supplementation is the best way to move the needle and get those levels back up to normal, because it takes a kind of a higher dose over a longer period of time to kind of bring your blood levels back to normal. It's difficult to do that if you're trying to do it with a glass of milk, which has 100 IUs, when you might need 2,000, you might need 5,000 IUs a day. Prescription dose for vitamin D deficiency is 50,000 IUs once a week for several weeks. So again, you need really high doses to correct a deficiency. So the best way to know really is to be tested, see where you're at. I think it's generally safe to take a vitamin D supplement of, 1,000 IUs a day. The upper limit is 10,000. And so 1,000, for most people is going to be perfectly fine. But if you're deficient, it may not be enough. So I guess that's my story on vitamin D is more is not better, better to kind of know where you're at. Vitamin D levels are impacted by a lot of different factors. This time of year, sunlight, our vitamin D levels go up. If you are dark skin complected, you're less likely to make more vitamin D from sun exposure. So that could be a risk. If you're overweight or obese, vitamin D gets stored in fat tissue and then can't circulate to other body tissues. And it's important for a whole lot of reasons. So that can be a risk factor. If you're elderly or older and you don't get outside very much or more homebound, which we all sheltered in place for a while. Although I did see a lot of people out walking in that first couple of weeks. I was like, wow, if there's a positive here, it got people to get out a little bit and get some outside air to breathe. So anyway, that's kind of my deal on vitamin D. Get tested. A little bit's probably not going to be a problem, but it's better to know where you stand. Zinc, in terms of supplementation, again, plays a central role in immune function. Zinc's involved in about 200 different enzymes in the body, and those enzymes are responsible for helping facilitate metabolic reactions. Zinc deficiency increases the susceptibility to a variety of pathogens. And although there's not been any specific studies protecting against COVID-19, one of the things that zinc may do is it may block the entry of viruses to attaching to our healthy cells. So again, going back to kind of my list of zinc containing foods is to try to get those in your diet. But, if you want to take a zinc lozenge here and there, it's a great delivery form, because certainly you're going to suck on that lozenge. And if any virus has kind of entered, maybe perhaps you're going to enhance the ability of your body to prevent it from attaching in the first place and coming into our body. So I don't want to make those declarations, but there's some interesting rationale, I guess, for doing a zinc lozenge here and there, especially if you think that you might have been exposed.
Pamela, just a warning that we have just a couple more minutes. I think from seeing the questions, it looks like you are going to address pretty much all of them within this presentation. So if you want to just go.
Okay.
And then
So I'm almost done. So we'll just go through the last thing in terms of supplementation, I guess, and also food, is just talking a little bit about probiotics and prebiotics. So again, our 70% of our immune cells are in our intestinal tract. We have good bacteria there, not so good bacteria, and you can fuel the healthy bacteria and add more healthy bacteria to your gut to support that that first line of the immune response is is our gut and our skin. So probiotic foods, yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, prebiotic fibers, those are going to feed the healthy bacteria. So things like asparagus, avocado, green bananas, ripe bananas do not have the starch level that that's good for feeding your bacteria. But make a smoothie, add a green banana in there. You can take supplements. Again, supplements vary, and I'm not going to make any specific recommendations, but just some things to think about. Strain matters. There's a lot of research on, consuming this particular strain of bacteria for a particular condition. And if it's not possible to find a specific product, one that has multiple strains is probably a good idea for an overall general daily, probiotic. Get a high dose, 50 billion or higher is ideal based on the research. And there's some really good resources. Consumers Lab, Labdoor, probioticadvisor.com. You can go and research health conditions and they'll give you a list of kind of the types of bacteria and the probiotic supplements to look for. So those are all great resources. So Consumer Labs, Labdoor, and Probiotic Advisor. Just to give you some ideas, breakfast could be overnight oats, which is you put oatmeal in with some milk and you just keep it overnight in the refrigerator, and then it's kind of ready to go the next day with some vitamin C rich strawberries, scrambled eggs with sweet potatoes to get that vitamin A in, perhaps the tuna and the beans and arugula to get some protein and some folic acid. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of throw some ideas of fish tacos for your omega-3s. So there's creative ways to build a healthy meal. And healthy snacks, again, some ideas here: berries and a cheese stick, some roasted chickpeas, some yogurt with honey and sliced almonds, some steamed edamame. Again, these are all easy things to do and are full of immune supporting nutrients. And last but not least, as we wrap up here, I want to talk a little bit about maybe what we shouldn't be eating a lot of right now, or in general, not just now for good health. But there are, as I said, there's ways we can eat to drive an anti-inflammatory place, and then there's some that promote more inflammation in the body. So saturated fats, whole milk, butter, cheese, those are sources of saturated fat, promote inflammation in the body. Refined and processed carbs, white bread, white rice, everybody's been baking a lot during this COVID-19 thing. So again, just being conscientious of whole grains, high fiber, whole wheat bread, brown rice, quinoa, those are healthy carbs. Not a lot of sodas and ice cream and added sugars, not a lot of red meat and junk food. Those are things that are going to promote more inflammation. And maintaining a healthy weight, something called the quarantine 15 that I've heard used as a phrase during this time. And we know that obesity is not helpful during this time, or in general. Obviously, obesity puts you at risk for all kinds of things like diabetes and heart disease and sleep apnea and osteoarthritis. And again, all of those conditions have inflammation associated with them. So, trying to stay at a healthy weight, trying to prevent weight gain, trying to be active. We know from some recent research that folks who were hospitalized with COVID-19, if they were obese, they had more of a serious illness, they had longer hospital stays, they had more intense and prolonged oxygen treatment and higher markers of inflammation in the body. So want you to be at a healthy weight and stay well. As I just kind of wrap up, last but not least, I really want for everybody to get through this challenging time together. So, eat well to stay well, wear your mask, social distance. Let's do this thing together, and anything I can do to, support the community. If you have questions and concerns, you could email me. My email address is on this final slide. I cannot promise it. I'll get back to you right away. things are a little busy and crazy, but I will try. But I look forward to maybe doing this again sometime and supporting you all. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Pam, and thank you everyone for joining. Have a wonderful day.